Some days you push through, some days you protect your energy. As I've done this wet on wet technique, I'm just feeding extra colour in, just in those areas where it's a little bit stronger, and just building that foundation layer. Keeps blending here though, which it will do because it's going downhill, because the paper's just gone a bit ruckled in that area, which does happen, but it'll straighten out. We can build on the next layer. So on this layer I was actually going to put just a layer of green and then add in the different greens just to give a bit of a mottled background, but just decided that why start with the green when you could just start with the mottled. So I'm just feeding in. I was very wet underneath, and I'm just feeding in these colours randomly. It doesn't matter if it's not quite mixed on that blue, because it just adds the extra depth. Now one thing with the watercolour, it will dry lighter, so I'm going to pile in as much as I can before I get too ruckled on the paper, because it will ruckle and then I'll flatten it again. The one thing with wet on wet, you can do it twice, so we can always build another layer just in exactly the same way once I've got rid of that curve in the paper. I could have taped it down, but it still doesn't. Okay, so to flatten this out a bit, because it is a bit curled, I'm just going to turn it over, and I'm going to, with some very plain water, you can use this in a spray bottle if you've got one, if not, a paintbrush is fine, just paint the back with clear water. Now, sometimes you do this and you can put it under a book and leave it overnight, put another piece of clean paper over it, but I have found sometimes I can do this with a hairdryer. I like to say sometimes, just in case it goes and lets you down. Not too bad. I'm quite happy with that. It was just starting to do the reverse, so I thought I'll flip it back over and get it flat again. So coming back to this, I'm actually really happy with that background. I might not actually go any further on it. I'm just going to work on the armadillo. I'll do this bit in a short while. I want to let you into a little bit of a secret. Sometimes I have to paint these in sections because of it drying, because of room on the camera storage. And after I'd stopped the other day, which I've had a day off by the way, so I had an email to deal with that was dealing with finances. And do you know, sometimes this is the side of things that is another pain in the neck when you've lost your partner, because there's so many things that you have to deal with on your own, and you just don't want to. And some of it is just, it tests your patience, tests your brain, and I actually was dealing with it, and it didn't put me in a very good frame of mind, so I didn't come back to the piece of artwork because I left it for a day whilst I just got myself back on the straight and narrow as such. And yesterday I went for a walk. I started a different piece of artwork that's really just one that will go in my collection, because it was a piece I didn't have to talk with and it was for me. But as I've come back onto this today, slightly better minded. This is a bit too yellow actually, I wanted a bit more brown than that. I thought, wow, he's quite a nice little guy actually, this little armadillo. So as you know, when I do pictures, if you've watched any other ones, I normally just do a little research on what's the meaning behind certain animals in a more spiritual way. And the armadillo comes up with protection, setting boundaries, guarding your energy, and the adaptability, because it can roll itself into a ball, showing strength. And you know, that's what I think I did yesterday. I switched off, rolled myself into a ball and said, I'm not doing this now, I'll come back tomorrow. And we are allowed to do that, you know. I think that's really sometimes important, to put your own well-being and your own, they call it self-love and all the rest of it, but I struggle with some of that. But at the end of the day, yeah, I was looking after me for a little while, but it just seemed appropriate that I'd already started this one and its little meaningfulness. How do you cope with things when things get tough and some things you don't want to deal with because you just haven't the strength to deal with, but you've just got no choice? Yeah, how do you deal with that? you can share it in the comments, but you can, you know, just think about it. Just think about what strengths you've got as you've progressed along this journey that maybe you didn't want to have, or you didn't have before because you knew you could share problems with somebody else. Sometimes it's good to just journal it out. Even when you're at a point of facing up to things, sometimes it's journaling it out, isn't it? I like this little character because it's got a little bit of a smile. I think that's what drew me to actually painting it, is the little smile. I don't know if it's a really young one, but it just gives me the impression of it being young. I said that about the cow last week, didn't I? Try and get that edge in. The shadows in. Shadows are so important on any artwork really, because it is what's giving it the 3D, they're bringing it alive, especially if it's an animal, but also in any art, you know, if you're doing a building or even flowers, your shading, your lights and darks are really important. There's going to end up a lot of pen work on this one because of these scaly skin. At this point now, we're not colouring the scales in completely. We're just giving it a bit of depth and a bit of shape. But the light will catch it. You won't see the colours as a solid colour. Where before we did the wet on wet, this is a dry brush really, and the paint is still wet, but it's not too wet. Yeah, so it's a bit wet on dry. So I'll keep building those colours up where it's a little bit stronger. It's all about these little layers, but also just appreciating that this bit is kind of a bit shadowy. It's quite hard in my reference picture to see under this area, and in a second I'm just going to do a little thing that I normally do as well, is if you're working, I'm working on an iPad, any device really, you should be able to go in to the photo and take the shadows out, and if you take the shadows out you can pick up that detail and see what's going on under there. The only thing I will say, remember to put them back in because it will throw the picture in the end. But building these dark areas sometimes can be a little bit of a challenge because of the paint dries lighter, so it's just a case of just build a few layers in. So I'd been off to my show at weekend of showing my art. Well, it was a market actually, they were both markets this week, and I do like to go out and get talking to people nowadays. But remember, I am 4 years on. When I first went out to shows, it was really hard to try and keep myself, you know, chatting to people without breaking apart, because I'd always done the shows with Rob. And some people, I remember one person actually saying to me, "Oh, I'm really surprised to see you." And I said, "Why is that?" I said, "Well, most people just don't come back onto the shows. So we're just supposed to just disappear." And he said, "Well, that's what they do." I was like, "Thanks. Thanks for that little... Nice to see you, Chris." It wasn't really nice to see you, Chris, but at least he spoke, I suppose. Some people don't even speak. But going to the markets, people don't know me anyway from previous business, and that I prefer now. I did my show in my face at other ones, and it was hard because sometimes people back off. I think as you build your own strength up, you come to just do your own thing, which I think is where I'm at again, is doing my own thing. Duller bits on here, but I don't want too strong, but they need that pink, that orange colour in them. Have you found that with going to places that you've been before, that you used to go with your partner? Are people treating you with kindness, or are they avoiding you? It's a real combination, I found. I keep doing this mixing as I go. I am getting these slightly different shades, which is what we want. I'd like a bit more of that red in it, but it keeps disappearing on my page. Normally, if you leave a blob on the plate, it will pick up again, but it's not picking up very nicely right now. So these on his head as well are a bit darker. I reckon that's because he goes in the mud. What do you think? Apparently they forage, don't they, I think? Dig for food. Which makes them very resilient little creatures. I need to have a quick nosy what the diet actually is, to be honest. Maybe it's bugs if they're foraging, I'm not sure. I'll have a look. The other thing I'm a bit baffled at is we have an ear here. Let's come up from the other side, but I've got something here as well. I don't know what that is. Maybe I need to just find a different picture of a armadillo like this and just see what it is. So that's actually the edge of the shell area. I've not actually seen one like this. Obviously this is a reference picture I've picked up. I'd like to. I've seen bigger ones. But I feel I've got this urge now. I need to go back to the wildlife park and see what's local. See if they've got any. I know someone who works there. I might ask her if they've got any locally that I could go and have a nosy at, because sometimes it's quite fascinating once you start doing animals that I like to know a little bit more about them. So this one I was doing because of its little smiley face. I'm going to just wet and wet this one again, so it'll get a quick covering and then we'll build up the wood effect. That's quite nice actually. It's like a plank of wood, so I want to try and get a little bit of texture into that now. If it's dragging on a piece, it's probably because you're not wet enough, which I wasn't then. That's why it wasn't actually covering the page. Right, so I'm just going to put, like we did before, just feed a little bit of colour in, like we did at the background. So I'm going to go straight in with a pen now because I just want to clarify some of the areas. We still need to put a bit more paint in the fingers, but I just want to go in and pull up some of that detail. First of all, get this line. It's going to be a little white dot and then I can just see it, which is great. I like a little white dot in the eye. There's a lot of depth in here that really hasn't been shown with the paint. But yeah, that's fine. Sometimes we do detail with a paintbrush or with pen. With the pen, I think this one really was always going to be warranted to be done with the pen. So down here we've got this outline is quite important, but I don't want to go dead straight lines with it all because it's just pulling out those areas that it needs to. That's why I've got the grey pen as well, but I'm not sure that grey pen wanted to work very well over here. So of course when we start this pen detail, it always looks a little stark to start with, and it's like, what the heck? Am I doing this right? Well, it'll work. You just have to, once you've got one line on, you just got to go with it. Like it or not, you've chosen to do the pen. Some dark area in the middle there as well. I'll come back with a bit more paint in that area. I think when you add the pen work slightly earlier, it gives you an opportunity to realise where areas need to be having a little bit more paint and a little bit more depth in. Never did look at what they were feeding on, but what I will do before the end of the video, I will have a quick look at that up and let's have a look and see what he eats. I have a feeling it's going to be bugs though, surely, or worms even if he's digging. Maybe worms, yeah. Very resourceful little creatures. I think nature is something that can ground us. You know, when days are getting to you, a walk in nature is Well, it's my go-to. What's your go-to? It's that time of the year where there's a sign of growth. As I went into the gardens yesterday, I live out in the sticks and there's shared gardens here that are, I don't have to manage them, thankfully, far too big. But there's a pond. Last year we had a lovely swan on the pond, and do you know, I love going and talking to the swan. No one knows I'm talking to them, only me. I think you get used to talking to animals, or a photo of your husband or wife. I talk to the photos all the time. So yeah, but it's bleak. Everything's died back and everything's a bit bare, but there is sign of growth, thankfully. Sign spring is on the way. And that's beautiful, isn't it? We've also got molehills. I think I need to draw a mole or paint a mole. I'm not sure if you ever catch a photo of them though. So I don't really want to build that up too exact, because I do think a little bit of just suggestion is better than actually trying to be too exact on it all. He has some funny fingers. They kind of look almost hardened. Maybe they need to be for the soil, for the digging, but you can tell he's digging because there's lots of grub in his nail. Little dirty devil, what do you say? And if you've got children, do you remember when they're little and they come in all covered in mud from digging? I have a grandson who likes to be out in the mud. So it's quite strange how there's different sections of these that here they're more random hexagonal, and here they're more like tiles. There's like a change in the structure, and some of it is quite dark here. So I think I'm going to give my friend a ring and see if they have anything like this at the wildlife park that she works at. It'd be nice to go and see an armadillo. Like a little tile roof there, isn't it? So these ones have got more of like the hexagonal bits. If you do these too solid, it does become a bit of more like a colouring, paint by colour, or is that what they call it, paint by colour, or just like a colouring book. So, you know, by just being a bit more random with your lines and don't close it, it's more arty. And although we know the hexagonal, because he's bent, they're going to be split different ways as well. I don't think I intended to do this in black, but there you go, we did it now. Can't take it off. This edges round where you're coming around the edges, it just needs to be a little bit shadowy because it gives that impression that it's actually above the other. You think, oh, that's enough, and there I go, oh, there's another bit there, maybe I need to fill that bit in. Okay, so I think they are, there's his little body under here and his little face kind of goes back, it's all wrinkly. So we'll add a little bit of darkness into there shortly. So I'm going now into a bit more shadows, a bit more depth in areas, and this area here, because it's going downhill, it's going to be darker. I do know it's a wash. We give the extra depth in the area, but we also can still see underneath. So it creates, it still creates the texture of the different colours. I'm going to actually still wash maybe that bit there in that same colour. You know, thinking of what this represents, this animal, the perseverance, because it digs for its food and forages and that. Oh yeah, and it does eat. I did look. It eats insects mainly. 90% of its diet is insects and the insect larvae. But then it also eats earthworms, and it also eats spiders and scorpions. I'm not too bad about those spiders. I'm not very... I have to cope with spiders now, as I'm sure if anyone else doesn't like spiders, you've got no option but just suddenly decide that you can cope with them. don't have a scorpion issue here, funnily. And it might eat a bit of fruit and veg as well. So it has quite a variety of food, isn't it, really? There still is a little bit of that orangey colour still under there, actually. I think it's just so dirty from digging. But once you really look at those feet, those toes, they're toes or fingers, aren't they? Do you think the fingers are toes? More like claws, aren't they, for digging? But they are actually a bit pink. So I think that they've lost the colour with soil. So I was thinking of the wording for this one. So I think as we are further on in with the grief, beyond year 2, it's easy and exhausting to put a brave face on for other people. Because they say people can't cope with talking to you about it all the time. So you stop talking to them about it in a way. But then inside you're just burning up all the time. So it's really, really important sometimes to have a bit of time out and give yourself permission to have time out and save your own energy, because I think the whole thing can be very, very exhausting when you're not actually talking to anybody about it properly anymore. No one totally gets it. No one realises the pain that you're still in. That pain, it might soften in years, but I think year 2, you've hit reality. You've hit the reality that this is your life. Now, going forward, I don't think that hits immediately. So yeah, my wording for this one is I protect my energy without guilt. And I think we really have to do that. We have to think that while other people aren't understanding how desperate we still are with the grief, with the loss. I hit some real bad lows, actually, that second year. Really bad lows. When I think back, it wasn't pretty. How have you coped with the second year? If you are in the second year, how have you coped with it? And again, if you're not going to write that in the comments, which I understand, do think about it, journal it out. If it gets to you still, journal it out. I've journaled all sorts. Sometimes quite brutally, I think. I do wonder sometimes if I'll ever destroy it before I die, because I don't really want my kids reading it, because I don't want them to feel guilty that maybe they missed this bit of how bad I was. But then again, that was me putting the brave face on, going, pretending things are all right when they're not. How's my shading going? What do you think? Am I getting there? Oh, that's a bit dark, isn't it? I've not done around the ear, have I? Okay, this ear needs to be dark on that edge, because that's where it goes into the ear. And then around the outside, it's making a shadow here, isn't it? Quite dark around that area. I think that's maybe the skin area, as opposed to it turning into whatever the coat is made of. I mean, it must be similar to tortoises, wasn't it? Like a shell. But obviously it moves because they can roll up. That's the bit that hits the soil a lot. I'm watching my reference picture all the time, and I should tell you who this is from, actually. I know, again, I need to just make a reference to that. I might actually do that in the comments, though, because I need to look it up. Some of my reference pictures are literally free from people on a group I'm in Facebook, and they very, very kindly let us use their photographs, which is brilliant. I do prefer taking my own, but obviously I don't get the opportunity to see animals from around the world always. So, when there's someone putting something like this out, to me, this is amazing. When I saw this one, it was like, yeah, I kind of need to do you. I like you. So I'm just going to put some detail in here. I don't want it that even. In there would be shadowed. I also think as well, if you challenge yourself to doing something, you know, like taking apart or a hobby of some sort, you might already do one actually, but if you challenge yourself just that little bit further, especially at the worst times of the day, it helps those mind monkeys. It helps control them for a while, which is why I paint. And sometimes I do, you know, the watercolours like this or water inks, but then sometimes I do in the acrylics now. I haven't used oils as much for a while. Only because the only reason I don't is because they don't dry quick enough. And once I'd started with acrylics, and they dry so much quicker, and you layer differently and convert it, and so yeah, the oils have gone on a bit of a back burner at the moment. And I can't do oils sat on my knee, which I do quite often. You'll find another playlist started called Painting on the Knee. Because this one I do on a table because I film, but other pictures I do literally on my cushion, paint on the coffee table, and sometimes I throw a film on as well, or music. I'm more likely to watch music, to listen to music if I'm honest. Quite enjoying this little man there. Still think that there needs to be darker. It's that drying lighter that sometimes is a pain in the neck. But if you try and do it too dark to start with, people won't, it does not look good. It goes too solid. You do need to build colours. How's it looking? Ooh, quite shaped. So on the final stretch, I reckon, just need to add a little bit more shadow. There's a little bit around his eye. That above the eye is a little bit darker than we've got. So just final little touches sometimes that make all the difference. There's a little bit of shadow under this toe as well. There we go. And then these ones are still not dark enough compared to the top ones. We need them to be in the shadow, stronger colour. There's also quite a strong darker line along here as well. I don't really know why that one is darker, but whether it's just because it's bent and it's just where those scales are sort of opened up, because although we call it a shell like the tortoise earlier, it can't be identical, can it? Because this one can roll in the ball to hide, whereas the tortoise goes within the shell, doesn't it? So there must be some difference, wasn't there? So as I'm doing this one, I'm coming to the finishing end of it. You know, like I did yesterday, I gave myself permission to have time out, to look after my well-being. And you're allowed to do that. We're all allowed to do that. It's really important, so please do that. Sometimes I'm feeling just that tad awkward. Have some time. To clarify a little bit under there as well, actually, his little mouth. So probably around his nose. I quickly dried that because it really was a little bit too wet to do this bit, so I'm just going to go in now. Just put a tiny detail back in. So we have a little line underneath. There's little marks in here that we've really addressed. Little scaly bits around its eye still. Just going a little bit heavier over some of these areas because we washed over it, didn't we? So it's just dulled off in areas. Just clarify some of that dark area there. Okay, so now it is the whiskers, and then we'll be there. Okay, so it's a real big cluster that goes on here. And then there's a few here. I suppose this must just stop and getting stuck anywhere, mustn't it? Right? That's normally what the whiskers are for, isn't it? It is quite down his arms. Lots. And even down his body, but that's quite low, so I'm not going to go too mad. It's not up here somehow, it's down to the bottom end. So I'll just throw a few suggestions in. Okay, what's your thoughts? Are we there? I need to lift him up so I can see. Yeah, I quite like him, don't you? So what do you call an armadillo? I mean, I've given it the name for the affirmation. I always give them a name as well. It was better than a piece of wood. Looks like a piece of wood now. Hey, I really hope that you enjoyed painting or just watching with me, really. I protect my energy without guilt. And so we should. You know, sometimes we've just got to sit back and say, not today, thanks. I'm just going to look after me. If you'd like to follow the rest of this journey with me of painting through the ache, I'd love you to like and subscribe. And that way you'll know when the next piece is ready. See you next week.